regards to Black Friday for the New York Jets. It was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. And I can't believe there were actually people out there that thought anything was going to change with Tim Boyle being the new starting quarterback on Friday. We all know Tim Boyle is probably going to be the next quarterback for Sunday's game versus the Falcons. But the reality is Zach Wilson needed to be benched, not necessarily because of there was better options behind him. He needed to be benched because it was time. It was time to hold him accountable. And that was the biggest reason why I think it needed to happen. But if you were somebody that actually expected a better product necessarily at the quarterback position, I don't know what to tell you. Tim Boyle's not Mike White, right? They knew Mike White was better coming to the season. They purposely did not make him the backup quarterback to Aaron Rodgers, most likely because Joe Douglas wanted to basically value that number 2 pick selection that he had for Zach Wilson. Now, they didn't see it coming, but Aaron Rodgers went out in 4 plays. So that basically means Zach Wilson didn't really have to compete at all. Now, this year started off with that Bills game victory. Everything's great. And then it got to the point of the Eagles, that ridiculous win, 3-3. The Giants' ridiculous win, 4-3. Now the team is 4-7. They've lost 4 straight. They've lost to a divisional opponent in the Dolphins. They lost to a horribly mediocre franchise in the Los Angeles Chargers. They lost to another mediocre franchise in the Las Vegas Raiders. This is bad stuff. This is the end. We're in the end game right now. And now those theories about Rodgers possibly returning in December, I can't imagine it ever happens. How would you think, with the team's record being this poor and how far they are down in the standings, how could you think that, Rodgers is coming back this year? I don't think it's going to happen. I know Jets fans that want to see him. I know Jets fans that don't want to see him. But the reality is, I just don't think it's going to happen. Whatever you think it should or shouldn't happen, Aaron Rodgers is probably not coming back this season, mainly because of that. And New York Jets fans are stuck witnessing the mess of the people that he likes and the people that he brought on board. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Nate Hackett, possibly still sticking with Robert Saleh, keeping Zach Wilson possibly as well. They're stuck with a lot of the mess that Aaron Rodgers probably would have fixed with his greatness, but at the moment, it's not the case. And now the Jets got to start thinking about quarterback alternatives because Aaron Rodgers, let's face it, next year could be his last season. I think most people knew this was going to be a 2-year thing. Maybe if it goes well, it gets to 3. But 1 year is gone, and it's a wash. This year is a wash. 4-7, this is worse than last year. I mean, the fact that the Jets lost 6 straight at the end of last year, after the Breece Hall injury, Zach Wilson's incompetent play, we all knew that was the case. This year, they couldn't even get to a point where they were 7-4. They couldn't get to that point. That's how incompetent the quarterback play is. And we can look at several different things, right? But the big issue is a bad quarterback. Now, we can go at Nate Hackett's horrible offensive play calling, how boring it is to watch the Jets offense, to run it up the middle and get completely stopped. It's hard, I get it, when you don't have that many weapons, but my God, it's just so brutal to watch. And there's nothing more boring to me sometimes than watching bad offensive football, ending it in punts. I'm not a Jet fan, but I've been watching all the Jet games this year. It's hard. It's very difficult to watch. It's just that simple. Where do the Jets go on from here? Obviously, I think they're going to try and stay competitive, try to win games. Robert Saleh, his future. I mean, let's face it, man. I believe he's 15-30 as a head coach in the NFL. It's not good. We give the first year a pass. Last year, they made improvement, ended very poorly, right? This year, Aaron Rodgers goes down, but the excuses are gone. The Jets missing the playoffs this year, I think, still keeps him there. If Rodgers wants him, right? This all comes down to Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Robert Saleh is a good coach. I never really thought that at all. Never thought of it. I made one statement after the Brian Dable screw-ups in their Jet-Giant game that the Jets were playing for Robert Saleh. All these excuses could have been made, but they're still finding out to win games. Yeah, a lot's changed since then. I mean, look at Brian Dable with the Giants. I don't take back what I said in that moment because I believe what I was saying had evidence to it. But I never thought Robert Saleh was a great coach. I even said that at the time. You know, many criticisms have been said that he's too nice. This team is very undisciplined. Penalty, penalty, penalty. You'll see it all over the place. I haven't even gotten to the Fail Mary yet, which is going to go down as one of the most hilarious plays in history, especially in Jet history, even butt fumble level. And that's what that's what this season has become. Aaron Rodgers' Achilles injury, and then that Fail Mary. Just embarrassing. And at some point, the defense is losing. They're like, why must we try hard when this offense can't do anything? I mean, the play calls of Nate Hackett, like I said, not creative, nothing crazy, nothing going deep, nothing anything, just kind of just getting things over. But that's pretty much it. All this, though, goes on Joe Douglas. He's not a great GM. Yeah, I think we can look at some of the draft picks like Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson and give him a pass. Obviously, getting Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the Jets have a more talented roster than years past. What does that really say, though? What does that really say? The offensive line stinks. The quarterback, the biggest draft pick he had, basically, that he needed to hit on, has stunk. So, what do you go from here? Well, I think the plan is very simple. I think you just ride this out until Rodgers comes back, and you got to communicate with Rodgers a little bit. And I think next year is it for them. I think the next year is the last year of this experiment. And if it doesn't go well or flops incredibly, then you really have to evaluate. You have to evaluate the coach. You got to evaluate the GM. You got to evaluate everything. Because Zach Wilson will not be back here next year. I mean, we said this last year. Who knows? I guess maybe we don't know. But I assume the Jets are going to draft into the quarterback. But who knows? I mean, it seemed fairly obvious to not make the Zach Wilson a backup quarterback last year. It seemed rather obvious, but I guess it didn't happen. Of course, Rodgers gets hurt and Wilson's back. Is the Jets season over mathematically? No, it's not, but it is. 4-7. 6 games left. Were they going to run the table? Has this team proven anything to make you think that they can do that? 3-3 after a great win versus the Eagles. It was their high point. Even the Giant game, not really a high point. This team is as good as 4-3. And had a pretty weak schedule. And they look terrible. You can't win in the NFL if you can't score touchdowns. And that's on everybody. I know a lot of it is quarterback play and Rodgers not being there, but you need to give Rodgers some more targets. You need to give Rodgers a better offensive coordinator. I know he loves Nate Hackett. And maybe he can make Nate Hackett work. Maybe Sean Payton was right. But we don't know. Maybe Saleh's a better coach than we think, and he just needs a better quarterback because he's never had one. And because of that, I think they run it back next year. And I think they use the draft to possibly get just to improve the offensive line and get a better target. But that's really all you have to say. Anybody who thought it was going to be better with Tim Boyle. I mean, it's funny. I'm hearing Jets fans say, let's go back to Zach Wilson. I can't imagine people calling Robert Saleh an idiot for keeping Zach Wilson out there. Maybe he had a point. He gives them the best chance to win because they have zero at that position at the moment. And you know whose fault that is? Joe Young's.